Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Oklahoma Sooner Tailgate Live. My name is Jason Ray, taking you over the next 30 minutes to an hour, however long we go, talking Oklahoma sports, previewing Oklahoma's game this weekend against Iowa State, talking about some other Big 12 matchups going on this weekend, and then talking about some Oklahoma softball. Oklahoma has announced a couple of things over the last few days. Talked about their battle series a little bit last week that we were on here, and then talked a little bit about a stadium update today, actually a little bit earlier this afternoon. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Any comments, any questions that you guys have. A couple of other topics that I wanted to kind of break down and discuss as well. So thanks for joining us here. Make sure that you hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you know when we're going live, when we have to change, and things like that. So things will be a little fluid here on Fridays from time to time, kind of depending on, what we have going on. What I have going on. I think a lot of you guys know that I coach high school basketball, and so we're getting kind of cranked up right now. Our games are going to start towards the end of October, early November. So Fridays might be a little bit hit and miss from time to time in terms of what the time is, but we try to, as much as possible, go live at 4 p.m., 3 p.m. Central. Today, obviously, we had to do this a little bit ahead of time at 1 p.m. because I've got some prior engagements that I have to attend to at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So thanks for hanging in there. Always remember to join me and Mark live. When we go live on Wednesdays, typically, and this was our last show, live 131, typically on Wednesdays around 11:30 a.m. Central. Again, that sometimes has to change based on availability, based on timing, and what have you, in terms of what that looks like. So, but all the more reason to make sure you hit that notification bell so that you do know when we're going live, and share this with your buddies so that we can continue to talk Oklahoma football here on the Oklahoma channel, the SG1 Sports channel, and then also we've talked a lot about the new Big 12 channel, and I will put that in the comments after we're done here, and we will we will continue to push people to try to subscribe to that channel. And get on board with us there as well. And we will continue to simulcast this, I believe, over the next few months, like ending 2023, and then obviously next year once we'll go into the SEC, and then we'll obviously move that over to the SEC channel as well. So. Maybe we might be able to still simulcast Oklahoma channel and SEC, but we'll see when we get there. So a lot of things going on right now. There's a couple of things. One in particular that I wanted to make sure that we addressed here before we get going on the Iowa State preview here. And before I do that, go make sure that you follow me on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Jason Ray 1. Really easy to remember, Jason Ray 1. So me and Mark got into a little bit of the conversation related to Dylan Gabriel, and kind of where he's at, and really kind of in the mindset of Oklahoma fans on how Oklahoma fans view him. And I think there was a video that was posted that really kind of led you to believe that, not really led you to believe, but kind of painted the light that Mark and or myself is really calling for Oklahoma to make a replacement. That is absolutely not the case, not true in any capacity. I don't think that this is certainly not the time or the place or the situation where there should be any sort of question about who QB1 is on this team. Did Dylan Gabriel miss some things and things like that on Saturday against Cincinnati? Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. But at the same time, he's playing at a very, very high level 12 touchdowns, 1 interception, completing almost 80% of his passes. I think 79 and some change. And so where I was coming from, and a lot of the things that kind of I tend to see on social media and things like that, is there is just such a high expectation for Dylan Gabriel, and there's about, and maybe not half, maybe not necessarily half of it, but there's a good amount of the fan base that, just because of some of the inconsistency that you see out of him, there's about half of the fan base that seems like I see that they're just ready for Oklahoma to move on to Jackson Arnold and start his career. And there's half the people that really just kind of defend Dylan Gabriel and what he's been able to do over the last couple of years, just from a consistency perspective. So just to kind of put that to rest from me, in my view, I'm not of the opinion that Oklahoma should make any kind of a change. I think Dylan Gabriel is much improved over where he was a year ago. And, I'm excited to see, how he responds from that game, and then certainly as he goes into Red River next weekend as well. So, I think there's always been, and maybe there always will be, that expectation that whoever the Oklahoma quarterback, whether it's Dylan Gabriel or whoever, us as a fan base have been really spoiled, honestly, over the last few years by, even you can go as far back as you want to, Jason White, Sam Bradford, if you want to put Landry Jones in that mix, and then certainly over the last few years, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, all to a certain degree. And so it's always just important to remember that that's not necessarily where Dylan Gabriel is. He's not that type of a quarterback. He relies on the support of his offensive line, of his receivers, of his running game. He's not going to go necessarily win a game. So I think some people see that and automatically just don't think that he's the level that he needs to be, because he's really measured on that level, so to speak. So I think that'll, for the remainder of this year, that'll continue to be the same thing. But just wanted to make sure I cleared that, and in no way was I or Mark calling for the fact that Dylan Gabriel should be replaced, or that is something that needs to happen without a doubt. I think he's certainly playing winning football. He's certainly playing championship level football completely. So I just wanted to make sure I addressed that as well. William, thanks for joining. Boomer Sooner, absolutely. Jimmy, yeah, absolutely, yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. And as we go through that, we'll continue to talk about. He's the quarterback is always going to be the position offensively for sure that is always going to be maligned, always going to be discussed, always going to be criticized and critiqued at a high level, kind of regardless of the team or whatever it is. And I think, may rightly so. I don't know if rightly so is the right word, but it's just the way it is. So he's going to continue to be held to a high standard, and let's see if we can live up to that standard of Oklahoma quarterbacks. And I think this year he has a little bit more, I think, help at the wide receiver position. Kind of remains to be seen what the offensive line and, kind of running game will continue to look like. So, so as we dive into this week and we preview Iowa State, I'll talk a little bit more kind of about what some of our plans are for Texas, and some things that we might do here on the channel next week for sure. So looking at Iowa State, this is a team that Oklahoma beat in Ames 27-13 last year. If those of you that remember, Oklahoma had 3 interceptions in that game. off Iowa State quarterback Hunter Deckers. Oklahoma actually got a fake, I believe it was a fake field goal score for a touchdown. I think it was a Michael Turk pass to Zach Schmidt for a touchdown in that game. The first one that Oklahoma has had in a while. So, again, both teams are different than this year, but it was one of those situations. Iowa State was a 4-8 club last year, but almost every one of their games was one possession except for the Oklahoma game, and TCU, I think, obliterated them towards the end of the season. I think it was like 62-14 last game of the year. But other than that, they played everybody close. And so when you look at this Iowa State club this year, very similar, I think, in a lot of ways to what they were a year ago, particularly when you look at them on the defensive side of the ball. We can kind of start there, looking at what this team is. Defensively, they're sound. They play. They're never going to have the most talent in the conference, certainly not in the country, but not even in the conference. But they play extremely hard. They're very well coached. The Iowa State deploys, I guess is the better word to say, that 3-3-5 defense that Oklahoma has really struggled with from time to time. Really was and I think in 2017 was ultimately one of those situations where it really started to show fits for Oklahoma that just really hadn't been patient enough to take what the defense has given them, and so they're going to try to keep everything in the front, try to limit the big plays, if at all possible. They're a very sound tackling team. Like I said, they play hard. They've got some nice players on the defensive line. So this is a team that doesn't give up a lot. I think they gave up about 130 yards rushing last week to Oklahoma State. 71 of those was on one run by Ollie Gordon. So, I think they had somewhere like 20 outside of that, 24 carries for 60-something yards. So it's going to be a team that's sound defensively, without a doubt. And so Oklahoma is going to have to earn whatever they can get. So I think it's going to be important for the Oklahoma offense to take what the defense gives them, to move the ball methodically down the field, take those short gains and short passes, and not necessarily be super greedy on getting the ball down the field. Oklahoma actually designed a couple of nice plays last year. Had one for Jalil Farouk that ended in a pretty long touchdown catch and run, I think early on in the second half. But again, they're not a team. Iowa State's not a team that gives up a lot of points typically over the last couple of years, for sure. So Oklahoma's going to have to be efficient on the offensive side of the ball to put a lot of points on the board in what they anticipate doing. Right. So I think the one thing that's continued to be a struggle is the running game. And I think you can point to a lot of different things on why the running game's not been as strong as I think a lot of us anticipated it being coming into the season. And, whether it be, just the lack of productivity from Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, the lack of, them being able to play. Both of those guys have had some injuries early on in the season. I think there's a little bit of thought and belief that Gavin Sawchuk is still kind of getting in game shape and getting ready for what he needs to be and what he needs to have. So, again, it'll be interesting to see what the running game looks like just in terms of personnel in and of itself, right? Do we see more Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk this week? It's really been, one of those situations. Kind of mention this from a joking perspective, but we've seen kind of a alternate type of game plan in terms of personnel. One game we've seen just a heavy dose of Tawi Walker with Marcus Major sprinkled in there. Then we saw last week Marcus Major get a majority of the carries and Tawi Walker, just a few. Then we've had games where Javante Barnes and even Gavin Sawchuk had gotten a lot of carries, like against Tulsa. And then we've seen games where Gavin Sawchuk hasn't even played at all. So, like your guess is as good as mine in terms of what that personnel would look like. You have to think that this week potentially would be a good opportunity to let those guys run a little bit, see where they're at, and see what you have because I think Marcus Major I think he's solid outside the numbers, but I think he tends to be a little bit soft between the tackles. And Oklahoma's really struggled with the run blocking on the interior of the offensive line. Andrew Ray, McCaden Batower, Savion Bird, Troy Everett, Caden Green, those guys that have been there and been playing. There's just been some inconsistency in the run blocking. So this would be a really good week for Oklahoma to have some success in the run game, and to look at some things and maybe hopefully get themselves in a position where they're kind of amped up and ready for Texas. So yeah, those are some things offensively. I mean, defensively from Iowa State. Offensively, when you look at Iowa State, again, this is a team that was not a great team a year ago. Offensively, did not put up a lot of numbers, and they're definitely not as good. They're not as talented as they were a year ago. Hunter Deckers, who was the quarterback last year, was not terrible. I mean, he wasn't like a top level quarterback or anything like that. I think he 20 touchdowns, 14 interceptions on the year, so nothing just outstanding that's going to kind of be eye popping as far as that goes. But he's gone. Rocco Becht is in his spot. He's thrown for a little less than 900 yards on the season, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. However, he had his best game of the year last week against Oklahoma State, threw for 348 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. So you take away that game, and you have 3 games against Iowa, Northern Iowa, and University of Ohio. And he's only throwing for about 183 yards per game with 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So, he's a guy that I don't think he might be able to make a few plays, but I don't think it's a situation where he's not as good as Emory Jones. He's certainly not as good as Preston Stone from SMU. So I think he's not a guy. He's a guy that can beat you if you're not careful, if you're not playing sound defense, but he's not a guy that's going to go win a game or something like that. The running game has again struggled a little bit, less than 3 yards per carry overall from the running backs. Cartavius Norton had been the lead ball carrier thus far through the season, but Eli Sanders really got the most carries last week. Had 15 carries for 51 yards against Oklahoma State. So I look for him, Eli Sanders, to be the guy that that they go to, but still they're struggling to run the football, and how strong Oklahoma has been against the run this year. Would anticipate Oklahoma makes Iowa State one-dimensional in this game. So Jalen Knoll is probably the biggest threat from a wide receiver perspective. Had 146 yards last week in a score against Oklahoma State, but only has 202 yards for the season. So only had 60 yards total in these first 3 games. So a little bit, it's one of those things. Watching Oklahoma State, they are not a good football team this year at all. So the success that Iowa State had it was moderately surprising. I've watched bits and pieces of Iowa State a few times this year, and when you look at when you look at what they've done or lack thereof against Iowa, Ohio, and Northern Iowa in those games, and then what they did against Oklahoma State, it further points to the fact that Oklahoma State is just really a shell of themselves this year, very much struggling, because they scored 34 points in that game, and they haven't hit that all year. 30. They scored 31 against Northern Iowa. That was with a defensive touchdown in that game. So really haven't come close to producing at that same level that they anywhere near that level. So I think if Oklahoma should be able to make them one-dimensional, should be able to get some pressure on the quarterback. Offensive line is not super athletic, is not super talented. So I would think that this would be a great game where Oklahoma's defensive line should be able to eat a little bit. And so the X factor in this game is obviously the look ahead factor, right? When you've got someone like Iowa State that, kids watch highlights, kids see scores and things like that when they're looking at teams that they're going to play. They know they got beat by Ohio. They know they got beat by Iowa, and so the not necessarily doubt, but kind of the lack of focus may creep into their mind at that point. Really, just seeing the fact that, hey, this is a team that we can just show up and win. So you worry about the look ahead factor a little bit. I think there's a couple of things that I think Oklahoma's doing that's kind of surrounding this game that is making that look ahead factor be a little bit negligible. And what I mean by that is I think Oklahoma's dropping the alternate uniforms. I think it's probably going to be the Unity uniforms this weekend, and I know there's a love-hate affair with that, right? So I think, but that the kids get excited about that. That's something that they love, that they really really enjoy, and then you've got the night game. It's Oklahoma's first true night game. I mean, SMU game was kind of a night game, but it was a weird situation, a 5 p.m. game, but conference starting 6 p.m. game now. So I think that gets a little bit more attention, not necessarily just for the kids, but I think the fans, more interaction as far as that goes. And then the fact that Oklahoma's going to have some recruits here. I know David Stone is going to be here. Jaden Jackson is going to be here. I think there's some others that may potentially be visiting this weekend for Oklahoma. But so I think all those three things combined are going to help guard against the look ahead, because there's no way that this team is excited about playing Iowa State. I think they're excited to get on the field and prove they're still in the mode of proving these doubters wrong. From last year, but I think this team is probably. I would think that they're laser focused on what lies ahead next week in Dallas. So you go and take care. You take care of things. I mean, I think it's the coach's mentality, players' mentality that you have to focus on this week. Don't let next week take care of itself when it is. As fans and as people that cover the sport, cover the team. It is a situation where we can look ahead. I think we can think about that stuff, but we want to make sure that the kids and the team are just kind of laser focused on what they have what they have in front of them. So we'll see what that looks like in terms of a prediction. I'm going to go with kind of in the neighborhood of 30-10 for Oklahoma. So right on that line, Oklahoma's favored by 20, unless that's changed. I think it's still a 20-point spread. So I think it's right there at the number. I think Oklahoma. I think it's a game where Oklahoma controls are never in doubt. I think Iowa State maybe gets a late touchdown to get some of the third and fourth teamers that kind of get into the game late there. So, that's what I see. I mean, it's not one of those that is going to be eye-opening. Oh my gosh, this was an incredible performance. But it's also not going to be one of those things where it's just disappointing situation. I think it'll be very business-like, workman-like performance for Oklahoma. So I've got Oklahoma winning 30-10. And And so a couple other things, and I apologize for last week. I was not. I yet last Saturday evening, I started getting really sick, so kind of like a stomach bug situation. So I was not able to do the post game show last week, and so I apologize. I certainly don't plan on that happening again. So around 10 p.m. This week, we will do the post game show live and have our instant reaction as we talk about um, Oklahoma's matchup against Iowa State on Saturday, 6 p.m. on FS1. So a couple of other things as we look at some of the other matchups this weekend in the Big 12. Tonight we've got Cincinnati and BYU. Late game, 9:15. Should be a really interesting game. The line is actually even now. It's weird. This one's went back and forth a bit. But I would probably lean towards BYU in this one, just from my perspective. We don't have a lot of great matchups in the Big 12. We got at 2:30 on ABC, Canton, probably the best matchup of the weekend, and with the Big 12 at least is number 24 goes to number third ranked Texas. Texas has to guard against the look ahead as well. I think it helps that they have a really good opponent coming into Austin to face them this weekend, and so that'll be a really good matchup. I'm very interested to see. Texas has been really good, particularly on the defensive line. How they hold up against probably the best quarterback, certainly the best quarterback they've faced all year, and the best offense that they've faced all year in Kansas, which is 4-0 as well after their victory over BYU last Saturday. Houston travels to Texas Tech in a game that not a ton of interest. Texas Tech 1-3 really have been a struggle overall for them early on. Part of it they did lose Tyler Shuck for the year, kid that's just completely continued to have injury after injury. Hey, sorry guys. So um, I lost internet connection there for a bit. So thanks for holding on. So I think the last thing that I was really kind of talking about was UCF. They're hosting Baylor this weekend. Both teams 0-1 in conference play. Baylor is just a big time struggle so far this year. So we'll see if they're able to get it together. Obviously, we talked about Oklahoma hosting Iowa State at 6 p.m. On FS1. Oklahoma's still a 20-point pick. And then at 7 p.m., TCU hosts West Virginia. TCU is almost a 14-point favorite in this game. West Virginia's played a little bit better than I think a lot of us thought that they would. early on in the year. So 3-1, 1-0 in Big 12 play. They're only lost to Penn State, but this will be a pretty significant challenge as they go to Fort Worth to face TCU, who has rebounded pretty well off of that opening week loss to Colorado and has played well the last couple of weeks, particularly against SMU last weekend. So yeah, that's the Big 12 overall. Before we kind of talk a little bit, I teased this on my Twitter post a little bit ago that we'll talk a little bit about Oklahoma softball and a couple of things that are going on. But first, before we go to that, really wanted to talk about our coverage from Texas for the Texas game next week. So I will. It wasn't something that I was planning on, but I'm actually going to be going to Dallas and attending the game. So I think we'll probably do something Friday live from Dallas. Then obviously we'll do our post game Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, evening sometime after that. More to come, but we'll be able to do that live from Dallas and have a first eye view of that. Looking forward to traveling. I haven't been to the Red River game in a few years, so looking forward to the opportunity to go and watch, and has an opportunity to be a really, really nice matchup, and we'll get into that. If both Oklahoma and Texas win, I think you're probably going to see College Game Day and some other those preview shows coming to Dallas with both undefeated and both clearly at this point the best two teams in the Big 12 right now. Depending on ranked games this weekend, you could see Oklahoma potentially, based on if some results go a certain way, potentially creep into that top 10 area. Texas is, as we mentioned, Texas is number 3 right now. Oklahoma's number 14. So you've got a couple of opportunities, right? Just looking at the schedule. Utah tonight plays against Oregon State at 8 p.m. Oregon State's actually favored by 4 in that game. So that's an opportunity for Oklahoma to potentially move up. LSU is traveling to Ole Miss. Plays there. That could be an opportunity for Oklahoma to move. Notre Dame goes to Duke, 6:30 p.m. ABC game. Alabama goes to Mississippi State. Those are probably the 4 opportunities. So if those 4 go the right way, I guess if you're an Oklahoma fan, you could see Oklahoma get into that top 10, and you never know, but the pollsters might put Oklahoma in the top 10 and just to kind of see that top 10. In any event, I mean, it's always a great atmosphere. It's always an incredible flavor there. For my money, it's always the best. It's the best rivalry. It's the best game. We talked a little bit about this with Mark on Wednesday, in honestly being a situation where so many things are changing in the landscape of college football, NIL, transfer portal, conference realignment, everything going on is so different. The situation where it may not necessarily be, it almost may not be necessarily recognizable in some ways, right? But I think when you look at this game should never change where it's at. Should always be, I think, for my money, should always be in Dallas, should always be at the Cotton Bowl, should always be in with the state fair. Really the backdrop of this game. It just brings so much the 50-yard line situation where the fans are split. It's just a situation and a rivalry unparalleled in college football with everything surrounding the game specifically. So it'll be a fun time. Looking forward to it. Hopefully both Oklahoma and Texas really kind of do what they need to do to continue to make this game a big time game. And we'll have this we'll have this covered from every angle. We'll go in depth next week when we preview this game for sure on Wednesday, and we'll have to see what Friday entails in terms of it may be a later afternoon type of situation from the hotel on Friday afternoon. So we'll see how that goes. But okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about is Oklahoma softball. So there's a couple of things that are going on. I told you guys last week that the Battle Series is starting, and for those of you that don't know what Oklahoma really started last year was the Battle Series, and basically what this is just a series of inter squad scrimmages, exhibitions. Oklahoma, I mean, what other best way to get your to get a really good look in terms of your best team playing yourself, where they'll have an opportunity with a couple of other exhibitions. I think Seminole State is one, North Texas College I think is another one. But anyways, the Battle Series is the the best against the best. So I put together a few things, and it's just kind of just very interesting to see over the last 3 years. You've got 3 straight national championships, a team that has combined for a record of 176-8. 104 of those 176 wins has come via run rule. Of the 8 losses has been by a combined 15 runs total. So that just gives you a sense of how dominant this team is and how dominant the team has been over the last 3 years. So for me, this is a very exciting but a little bit of a bittersweet season because Oklahoma has so many seniors. I think 10 overall. And when you look at some of the seniors, they have 3 of the best to ever play the position at the University of Oklahoma, and probably top 3, top 5 overall in college softball. When you talk about Jada Coleman, center field, T.R.A. Jennings at second base, and Kinsey Hansen behind the plate. So those of you that get an opportunity to go watch them or cover them, or just follow them, please do so. It's you won't regret it, even if you're more of a football fan and you've never really followed softball, or you're just a big softball fan as well and you want to continue supporting them. This is a team that just don't miss the moments this year. As I mentioned, they've got 10 seniors overall, which is just incredible. I mentioned the 3. They've got Alina Torres, Riley Boone, and I'm going to miss someone, so I'm not even going to name all of them. So 10 seniors overall, 3 on the pitching staff, of 2 of which have been transfers coming in. So a couple of things that really just and I know scrimmages are scrimmages, right? So a couple of things that I'm looking for and I'm looking at just to see what it looks like. The 3 transfer pitchers. I'm really anxious and really interested to see how they pitch when you look at Peyton Monticelli, Carly Keeney, and of course Kelly Maxwell coming over from Oklahoma State. How do they look in terms of, because even Jordy Ball last year got hit a little bit. Alex Storako got hit pretty hard. And that only makes them better. So how do they look against Oklahoma's offense? So that's one area that I'm interested in. Certainly, I mentioned those 3, and then you've got obviously Nicole May and Kirsten Dale. Oklahoma has five girls, and even if you want to talk about SJ Guerin, you've got 6 girls that really have an opportunity to pitch this year for Oklahoma, and we'll see how that's kind of divvied up as the season goes along. The other thing I'm very interested in is to see how some of the true freshmen come. You got Ella Parker, who is probably one of the ones that are most likely to get some playing time early on. Cassidy Pickering is another one that is, when you look at her, she's like physically ready. Like you can tell she does not look like a freshman. She looks like somebody that's been there for a few years. So interested to see how some of the freshmen get acclimated to this team, to this roster, and things like that. And then I think the other one is a couple of position battles and how that shakes out. That's going to be interesting to see, particularly when you look at the shortstop position. You've got one of the best ever, um, and in Grace Lyons that has gone from last year. What does the replacement for her look like? You've got a few. I think you've got a few that are probably competing for that competition. You've got Avery Hodge, who is, I think, a lot of people have thought was kind of the heir apparent to Grace Lyons. Like, you've got her. I mean, I think you'll see Tiara Jennings there, kind of competing for that battle. You've got Alyssa Brito potentially. You've got Alina Torres potentially looking at that. So how that kind of shakes out and how some of the other positions shake out on top of that will be really interesting. If it's a situation where Alyssa Brito gets that, do we have Alina Torres move over from outfield to third base? And if that happens, who's that third outfielder with Riley Boone and Jada Coleman? Do you have a freshman that comes in? Do we have maybe Avery Hodge slides over there? Hannah Core, who was out with injury last year, jumping back there. So those are the three main things that I'm going to be interested in watching, and we'll talk a little bit about that next Friday as well. So I think that's all I got for today. Like I said, make sure that you come follow the page, hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you do know when we are going live each and every week, each and every time that we go live. Anticipate Mark and I going on Wednesday at 11:30 as we normally do, and then talk to you a little bit about our coverage from Dallas this next week. And super excited about that opportunity to go to Dallas and to take in this game. Will be the first one I've attended in a few years. So come back with us 10 o'clock Saturday night. We'll talk about everything that happened in the world of college football on Saturday, and most specifically break down Oklahoma's hopeful victory, but Oklahoma's matchup against Iowa State. Everybody enjoy the games. Boomer Sooner, and God bless.